Hi everybody again, it's the Alco Diesel guy here with shock of all shockers and Alco. In this case specifically a Rapido Alco RS11. No, it's not the new Haven engine, but it's just as interesting. It is actually an Alco demonstrator model. Anyway, the purpose of this video is to just take apart the engine, show you what's inside it. In addition to that, I'm also going to be putting a DCC and Sound decoder into this unit, which, as I've been informed, can only be this one. Luckily, I happen to have one of these decoders. It has to be this particular style, which is the new Loc Sound 5.0, pardon me, 21 pinner. As for the TCS, no direct sort of mention from the company about that not working. But what it said is, what they said kind of cryptically is, we understand people like to use other companies, but we've been unable to verify, but with anyone else but except this company, which is actually who makes their default sound. So immediately, I'm starting to regret not having this thing ordered with sound on board. Anyway, at least here I'll be able to give you guys a good sort of tour inside the engine and how to get it apart, as I understand that itself may require me to seek the assistance of a shrink, not to mention a few other things. Anyway, without further ado, let's get going on this. Here's the manual. Again, this has been shown in several videos. Right River Productions. I used to actually be a member of them for a while. Here is the parts catalog thingy for the company. Specialty items on this. You can order parts apparently from this. Shouldn't be a problem since Rapido has such excellent customer service. There it is. Ooh, that's nice. Oh, first impressions, I'm pretty blown away. Wow. Get it out of this little cocoon it's in. Rapido still does the more old school method, if you will, of cocooning everything in styrofoam, while a lot of the other manufacturers, and particularly Atlas, have moved on to literally drilling holes into the frame and mounting the, in fact, let me zoom in a little bit better, get a better shot here for you, and literally mounting screws in those holes and through the plastic support inside the box itself to ensure that the item shows up in undamaged condition. Here we go. Be very careful, I don't want to bend anything. Ooh, this is nerve-wracking. Oh, there it is.
As we take a close look at the locomotive, we see that the details are beautifully applied. Everything is there, including the railings, etc. I will also note that the paint, while perfectly applied at this stage, would not stay that way. Note the extremely handsome representation of the Alco logo painted onto the front here, and the beautiful effect the paint has in general, as well as the brake wheel mounted in the front. One nitpick this locomotive definitely deserves are those extremely cheap-looking window deflectors placed on the sides of the windows. They lack any kind of framing to give them depth, like a frame or color. It's as if someone realized at the last second they didn't have them in place, and they should have been, and just decided to put them in a hurry. If I didn't know any better, I'd say someone who was new to the hobby basically took a sheet of plastic, cut some cheap pieces of plastic out of that, and just crazy glued them into place. They really don't look like they belong there at all.
Okay.
And now let's get a good close look at the road-specific details, or in this case, factory-specific details, as this is one of the original prototypes. We see the unit has the steam generator details all in place, the only model I'm aware of that has these sorts of details built into it as stock. We also see that there's actually a brake chain applied to both sides of the truck, not just the one. Along the top, that grille actually has a fan underneath it, although it is very difficult to see. And again, we see all the grab irons are in the proper locations, and the paint is very vibrant again. And again, we also note the horns are in the proper location. Most Alcos had the horn mounted in a pod above the hood itself. In this case, we have one in one direction and one in the other. Again, the cheap wind deflectors make themselves very prevalent. They really look out of place on this otherwise very highly detailed model. Another detail I'd like to point out is the fact that the couplers are in fact painted, something that has not been done before that I'm aware of. Figuring out how to get the shell open, well, that required me to consult the instruction manual, and that's a pretty disturbing concept in itself. It turns out this locomotive is unconventional in more ways than one. Unlike Atlas, which would have you just remove the couplers, or Lifelike, which requires you to usually remove 2 screws plus the couplers, this model requires you to actually remove the cab, the nose piece, and the actual shell itself. The first step here, as you see me doing slowly but surely, is to get the railings off the cab section, as these would break as the railings are physically attached to the cab section itself, not with glue, just by pressure. I was pretty stunned at the instruction manual's next suggestion, which was to use a screwdriver to release the tabs underneath the cab to get it free. Again, metal on plastic, metal always wins, never a good idea. But I found the plastic sponger I had down there just wasn't doing the job, as it wasn't strong enough to move the heavy, strong clips back enough to free the cab out of its position. Finally, after a great deal of resilience and resistance from the shell itself, I finally managed to get the shell to cooperate and got the tabs freed. You still need to be very careful to remove the cab once the tabs are free themselves, as it is pretty much right on top of the other 2 pieces.
Finally. Good grief, that was ridiculous. One cab off.
As we can see from the area inside the cab, Rapido is known for its obsessive-compulsive attention to detail, right down to the control stand itself. This control stand is not only fully detailed, it also is backlit. By literally pressing a button on your DCC controller, you can illuminate this whole section. Nice little touch. The unit also features ground lights that will literally illuminate the ground around the locomotive, trucks, etc. Another nice little touch by Rapido there. Now it's time to get the short hood off, and we're going to be using a plastic sponger as you see for this again, but first we need to remove the railings on that section before we remove the nose so they don't break in the process. This is again a bit on the nerve-wracking side. We have to literally pry the plastic clips away from their locks so they will actually release and allow the front of the shell to come off. Again, this is required to release the main section of the shell itself. Finally, after struggling with that plastic sponger, I've realized there was only one way this was going to come out, and that was with the screwdriver. Cringe. I do realize these camera angles were terrible, but the fact of the matter is this is a very difficult process. It'll just have to suffice that you have to pry the clips away from the shell itself. And believe me, this is not for the faint of heart. As we can see, yes, I did break one of the stanchions off from the railing. That whole process took close to 20 minutes by itself. Now it was time to get the main section of the shell off. Warning, the following clip contains German. The alcohol diesel claims no responsibility for the increasing consumption of bratwurst, knockwurst, wiener schnitzel, Jaeger schnitzel, etc. Void for prohibited. See store for details. Wait a minute, how the heck did that last part get in there?
Leave it sight.
Again, with my sponger in hand, I decided to use my screwdriver, because, well, this thing was becoming such a pain to get off. Not exactly sure what the heck was done to this thing, but it just did not want to move unless I used more aggressive force than I would have liked. But I actually did a pretty good job of getting this thing free. In this case, I was having a hard time getting the stanchions that actually fasten the railings themselves to the shell off the actual shell itself. This is again required in order to get the shell free, but after removing 1 or 2 of them, I began to realize I could get away with just leaving them in place if I was careful enough, which is what I wound up doing. And as we see in the next clip, the paint has started to come off the plastic stanchions. It's very, very disappointing, especially for a high-quality model like this one, to say the least. And so it was back to the sponger to gently pop off what was left of the clips and remove the darn shell. Again, the following clip contains German. The alcohol diesel claims no responsibility for the increased consumption of Stollen, Strudel, or Linzer Tort as a result of viewing this video. 3 available at this price plus tax, title, and registration fee. Wait a minute!
Scheiße. Oh boy. Okay, das ist gut. So, wir gehen zu diesem her. Okay. Ah, das ist das du fahren. Nein.
I'd also like to point out some of the underbody detail, like that steam pipe hose running along the base there for the steam generator, something Rapido is known for.
Okay. Das fahren, okay. Oh boy. Well, Ah, gut. Ist das gut? Ja, okay.
This was a tedious process, requiring a lot of effort with the sponger and my fingers to try to release the darn clips.
Ah, yes, finally. My God.
As you heard me state in the video, yes, I finally did get it loose.
Yes! Oh, good grief. Fertig. There we are, finally.
As we can see by the compact setup, the motor is squashed in underneath the board itself, and the two truck drives are similarly squeezed in under either end and require disassembly to get to.
So summing up, the conclusion I can draw already from all the hell I just went through to get this thing off and into this whole section here to install my decoder is that buying this engine in the non-DCC and sound equipped variation is not worth the agony. So, as you saw there, a few of the parts did break. Unfortunately, this railing in the front snapped. I just saw that now. I don't know how that happened. Well, probably because I made a mistake on it. I was trying really hard to be careful. That's my own goof. I'm going to have to see if I can dig out plastic zap on that and see if that'll put it together. The manual actually recommends repairing it yourself, so I'm going to do that. I got the shell off finally after struggling with it for I don't know how long. I somehow avoided not breaking any of the tabs on this. I don't know how, but they're all in place. And anyway, now we're at the meat and potatoes end of this locomotive. This is the dummy plug. This is not a decoder. This needs to get removed. Now, one thing I want to do before I go any further is confirm that this actually has speakers or not, because I'm seeing there's speakers installed here. I don't know if this is... Oh, wait a minute. This is installed here. Is this a speaker? Is this eine Sprechen? No, this is eine Sprechen. Oh, it's, pardon the German. This is actually a speaker, which is a nice little feature. So they have the speaker in here. So it doesn't look like I actually need to add a speaker to it. I can just literally drop a sound decoder in here and it should start up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and grab my sound decoder and plug it in and see if I can find a rerailer or two to get the power over here. Maybe get this thing running the way it should. Okay, so as it appears there is a speaker on this, I'm going to go ahead and just pull the old decoder out. You want to be careful doing this as you can bend the pins. I'm going to use this as a plunger. I really don't feel comfortable using a screwdriver to do this, although that is the technique that is recommended by everyone else. I don't like doing that because, again, plastic meets metal, meets electrical device, not such a good thing. And again, it looks like this was on, either it was hot when it was put in or something else. It's really difficult. I'm trying to keep my hands out of the shot, but I just don't want to damage this. You want to make sure you pull this up. So I'm going to try to get it under here and maybe try to pull it up that way. Finally, one dummy plug gone. Please note the orientation. The plug is facing upward. Now again, what I'm putting in here, I've decided to go with is the ESU Lock Sound version 5.0. What I'm do is I'm going to snip them at two different levels here. I'm going to snip one wire here, goes toward the back.
The wires you see me snipping are the two auxiliary sound output wires that Locksound seems obsessed with in connecting to all of its decoders. They're at least a 21-pin design. Again, they're not necessary here as the locomotive already has its own factory-installed speaker.
Right there. That's as far as I want to go. And then I'll take one and snip it further up toward the front. Reason being is really quite simple. I don't want these to cross, and this way the wires are not necessarily close together, so it's easy to prevent them from contacting each other. Let me actually snip this one a little bit further back because I didn't like how much was exposed. And again, I'm making sure that the filament is that the wire itself is not naked and is therefore kept inside the insulator. Okay, the installation of this is the backwards of that one. Again, you want the plug section to face up because these plugs are going to protrude through it. So this is how you want it. I'm going to go ahead now and drop this in place. Let me move the camera a bit now for you. You want to make sure the one dead plug goes in this one side over here. And again, the decoder should lay right out toward the front. Right, if I look here, no, it doesn't say ESU. I thought I saw ESU on it, but it doesn't say that. Okay. Alrighty, so press down firmly. Make sure it's in right. Yep, that's in. Okay, so now because my workbench DCC system I usually use for this workbench is out of commission, I'm going to take this to my other DCC system, test it out, make sure it fires up and works. Once I'm done with that, I'll go ahead and start reassembling this because I don't want these parts to be sitting around for too long because I'm bound to lose or damage something else at the rate I've been going. So, onwards and upwards. Let me go off camera here for a little bit and test it out. Okay, after a few choice adjectives, I was able to get this to work, and the good news is that this is in fact the speaker, and it is in fact all wired up. All you do is drop the decoder in, make it a sound decoder, and the sound works immediately. I'll go ahead and restart reassembling this, and I'll film that as well. That should be a lot easier, hopefully. One thing I want to do before I actually begin that, though, is to take care of one little sin I committed. As you see, this front railing here has been destroyed. This is probably because of my own idiocy, but I was unable to keep this section from falling apart. As you can see, that is not detached. That little railing should be attached. It isn't anymore. Is it even missing something? Nope. Luckily, there's no piece missing. It's just not attached. So I'm going to do is I'm going to get my secret weapon, which is plastic zap, pardon me, and just zap this with it, and then hold it in place until it dries itself solid, and then I'll go on to checking the decoder to make sure that will work. And here's the product. It's called Plastic Zap. This is a medium CF glue. It's clear drying. It's designed to basically blend in with the paints on your model so you don't get any residue, the charming white stuff you'll note that piles up when you use crazy glue on these things. So you definitely don't want to do that. Now, normally I would say contact for warranty support to make sure it's okay to do this. In my case, I actually read the manual, and it actually talks about actually repairing some of these details yourself with glue if something does come loose. So in this case, while it may have had a little bit more help coming loose, unfortunately, though not at all the fault, though somewhat the fault of Rapido for making it so difficult just to put a decoder in place, I'm going to follow their recommendation and just go ahead and do this. Now, the trick with making any repair is to use as little glue as possible. I've already opened this up a few times. I'm going to basically get as much glue off my brush and into this bottle as possible, and use the absolute bare minimal on the actual thing. So I'm going to let a little of this drip off. Okay, take two on this. After holding it in place now for more than like a minute, I was able to get it something resembling the way I wanted it in there, so that's fine. And as you can see here, my railing is now pretty sharp, pretty well in. I should mention that there are two stages to the drying process of this glue, and most glues. While the manufacturer says hold it for 15 minutes to, 15 seconds, 15 minutes, 15 seconds to get it to dry into place. That's the initial dry period to where it'll start to set. It takes more like, in my experience, more like an hour for the stuff to harden fully. So I'm going to wait a little bit longer before I do the full assembly, but I'm going to start here slowly but surely. The first step is to put this back on. This is the main frame. Please note this has no relationship to a computer that runs a web server. It's just, well, the main part of the frame. The chassis, I should say, or shell, or whatever this is. So I'm just going to place this over here. Going to carefully guide around the railings I have in place.
And the following clip contains, heck with it, you guys know what I'm talking about.
Liebe Zeit. And when I'm speaking German, it usually means I'm struggling. Or I'm freaking out. Oh god, ooh, I just found something I didn't like. Okay, I just found that this seat, the engineer's seat of all thing, of course, which had the most critical of them all, is loose, very loose. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in here and actually fix it. I'm going to put a dab of glue on the bottom of this. Again, time for more of this good stuff. Means I will have to wait even longer to finish this job. What are you going to do, though? I want this done right. I don't want it done half-assed, especially considering all the work I went into to get this darn decoder in place. Very thoughtful move for Rapido to actually add their speakers to even the just DCC Ready model, instead of having it on sound equipped only. Let's get it in there. Ugh. That didn't go quite as well as I wanted it to. Alright, well, luckily it won't be seen by anyone, but I want to make sure it dries in pretty nicely there. So, with the last bit of my bodging completed, with this glue over here, I want to make sure this is dried first so it doesn't get permanently fastened in there, because it might spell disaster for getting this thing open again in the future if I ever do need to. I'm going to carefully align everything and try to get this lid back on. There it is. This is probably the easy part. I need to also be very careful now and mindful of these side railings here. They're not, I didn't remove them. The instructions say to remove those as well, but I figured since all the paint started chipping like crazy on the others, that I wouldn't even bother, because it sounded like I was just going to do more damage than anything else taking them off, because I did most of my damage just removing these darn things to make sure they didn't cause any problems, and then the ironic thing is it caused more issues. I think I'm going to cut this back a little bit more. I don't like the fact that this thing is hanging here. There we go. That doesn't look quite as hideous. Gotta be careful of that repaired area. Again, the glue has started to set, but the full set doesn't take place until approximately an hour after it's done, is what my experience has been. So from that point on, you still have to be very, very careful. That I recommend if you repair a model like this, a locomotive, do not run it until it's done. Okay, getting it down, just inching my way down, making sure that I'm touchdown, and I've made touchdown already. Okay, that's good. So I can now start to put this railing back in place. This is a weird hybrid railing, which I blame for most of the problems here. Rapido uses this plastic stanchions on these metal railings. So the plastic stanchions, or whatever you want to call it, are known to bend and flex, and you have two different materials, metal and plastic, competing with each other. That tends to cause a headache. It did in this case. Okay, well, the back isn't in. There we go. I just had to snap the back down. I guess you heard that. You just had to put a little pressure on it. I'm going to now focus very hard on getting everything back in. This is not nearly as stressful because I'm worried about pulling something apart. I'm worried about putting it back together again. There is still some stress involved here, but not as much. So let's see here. Now I'm trying to get the stanchion for the front here aligned correctly. Again, I am just so disappointed in the quality of the paint used here. Not by the way it looks, but in the quality of the general ability for it to stick on. It looks like either this wasn't cured correctly, or someone didn't do the research correctly on how to get this to bond. Because if you look at how easily this paint is chipped off, I barely touched this, and the paint is literally fallen right off with my fingers. The shell itself is great, but it's just the railings. Whatever material this is made of is just so prone to coming loose. You just look at it the wrong way and it'll fall off. So, big fail there for Rapido. I'm very disappointed in that, and as you can see, any area where I had to touch the railings, you can see they've fallen off. Their paint has fallen off. I'm not going to bother gluing those railings back on because I have a feeling I'm probably going to wind up taking this thing apart again. It always happens, no matter how much I try to avoid it. Following the instructions reverse, I'm going to next put the cab back on. Actually, no, actually, probably not this yet. We want to put the nose back on, the nose piece. Here it is. Get the schnoz back on this unit, if you will. And this is actually the good side, so I don't need to worry about ripping anything up. Carefully going around all the wires and different things. Again, trick on any of these models, reassembling, disassembling, etc. Take your time, don't break anything. Of course, well, that goes without saying, but take your time and go slow, and you're less likely to. It's in place, press down. If it'll cooperate with me. This piece isn't happy, is it? Oh, I see, I'm not down yet. There it is, snapped. It's got this thing has a very complicated amount of joins that go in place here. So, the final part of this reassembly is to then place this cab in position. If I can figure out how to do that without getting it screwed up. Okay, as it turns out, I did have the cab on backwards. Okay, so with all that assembled, I'm now going to check about my most recent sin, which is damaging or breaking this part off. I don't know where the heck this came from. Yep, and I did identify it. It is underneath. It is from the truck, as I kind of was wondering about that because it's silver, much like the trucks are on this unit, and like most Alcos are. If we take a look right over here, well, a lot of them are. This is where it comes from, underneath this truck assembly. Let's see, how does this go in? Now it goes in, it mounts these two areas right there. So I'm going to go ahead now and finish the assembly on this. This means basically grabbing these. Actually get a little more light here. Means grabbing these railings and putting them back into place, what's ever left of them, as the paint has started to chip off on these quite badly already. So I'm very disappointed in that. Okay, so this is the one where the stanchion broke off. Over here as I was trying to release it. The trick I found to getting these out is to actually go from the base and pry up. Unfortunately, I didn't realize that at the time. The instructions just tell you to remove them, they don't really tell you how. They do caution you it's going to be difficult, but that's about all the help you get, yeah. Kind of figured as much. Alrighty, folks, I give you a piece of imperfection. Anyway, this is all done right now. The railings are in place. As you can see how much of the paint just flaked off just from touching it. It's unfortunate. I'm assuming this is a problem with the painting process, because it looks like they got the part nailed. If you take a look at my railings, the railings are fine. There's no paint on the railings. The railings themselves have no problem with the paint at all. It's just the plastic stanchions they used. It's kind of a problem whenever you mix alloys like plastic or anything else together. You think, oh, I'll just use one paint on one type and just mix and match it, and it doesn't always work that way. And unfortunately for Rapido, it appears that's what happened here. So anyway, this is reassembled. Just don't ask how.
Please note the sounds you are hearing now are the official Loke Sound files, not the official Rapido files.
Oh, helps if I don't stop my engine, doesn't it?
Something that everyone's probably noticed by now is that the classification lights are stuck on green. Not sure why that is. I believe I have to remap them, but for the time being, everything else seems to work fine. One thing I will also note, and is probably very clear at this point, is that the stock Loke Sound files are much louder than the stock Rapido files. That's going to do it for this video on how to install DCC Sound in a Rapido RS11. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the film, and of course, as always, thanks for watching, and keep the metal side down.
Not a bad result if I do say so myself.